Hey, my name is Elijah Boyle. This is my podcast. I'm 19. I live in Eugene, Oregon, which is, if you don't know about Eugene, it's a pretty racist white town. That's that's the best way to describe it. A lot of people call it Tracktown, USA. It's kind of just a racist white town. I'm originally from Portland, which if you've seen the news lately, you probably know what's going on with Portland. Uh, I am African American on my mom's side. I prefer to be called African American since I grew up that way. I don't really identify with my dad's side, who's white, and I never really knew him. My adopted father is, I like to call him Middle Eastern, but he prefers Prince of Persia. And I kind of made this podcast, to help with my anxiety and to get things off my chest, kind of like therapy, because, there's so much to talk about right now. And I really want to get that out and, to help people who may be going through the same stuff and, small white towns who are African American. Because I know how hard it can be, with brown skin growing up and just seeing all white teachers. I mean, from like preschool, I didn't have a single African American teacher until sixth grade, and then she got fired for her beliefs about a year later. But I still consider her a mentor, and she's an amazing person. Shout out Rena Dunbar. She is one of the greatest teachers I had, and I wouldn't have another African American teacher till senior year in public education here in the great white liberal town of Eugene, Oregon. Shout out Duncan, for helping me cook. And, I used to rap. I still do. But, I kind of put that to the side because I had a lot going on. A lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, and a lot of self worth. So I kind of had to rediscover that and rediscover who I was. And now I'm kind of, back on my grind and really focused on making it out of Eugene right now and just experiencing the world and getting out of my comfort zone. So I kind of made a solo podcast. I am working on one, the Gene Boy, still with Chris, who's my roommate. Shout out Chris. But I came to Eugene from Portland when actually I came from Missouri to Portland to here now, and kind of been here ever since. But just not really. I didn't really have that many African American friends growing up, except for maybe this kid named Isaac Keller, who was adopted to white parents, and he was kind of one of my only um, minority friends that I ever had as a kid. I actually did have quite a few Hispanic friends, but that wouldn't be until like fourth and fifth grade, and it kind of stuck in my mind even till now because I've all I've seen really here is white faces, and I didn't really have that self worth growing up because I always felt different and as an like a outcast because I have all these white friends and I'm the only one with brown skin and a brown mom, so I kind of had to develop my own self worth, and that's when I started reading a lot, and I love reading. It's one of my favorite things. I still read to this day. I just don't have nearly as much time. But now that I'm older, I'm able to reflect on these things. So I made this podcast mainly just to let people of color know that, you're not alone. And I know how it feels to be racially profiled, followed by police. I've been called nigger a few times. And that's just the truth of it. I remember seventh grade, I went with my friend Sydney Hammer to the movies, and he had this big backpack on and skateboard on, and I just had this little backpack on, and we were with these girls, and they all had these purses and bags, and we got up there, they all go through, and I'm one of the last ones to go, and this white lady who's working the desk is like, "Sir, I'm going to need to have to search your backpack to make sure you're not bringing anything in." And at the time, I'm like a sixth, seventh grader, so I'm like, "Oh, that's fine. You can look through my backpack." But then, when I kind of reflected on that, she never looked through any of those white kids' backpacks. It was just me. And that wasn't one of the first, where it was kind of like, oh, I'm being treated differently. Because when I was about summer of going into seventh grade, I would always go to the skate park with Sydney. And, we would always get burritos and tacos, and I wasn't a good skater or anything, but I loved the music he listened to, and that was my homie. But I remember one time, I think it was, we had gotten separated because I went and got a drink. And I was, skating down the street, and this police car pulled up next to me, and just kind of, just like stayed with me. Because I had this backpack on, this hoodie on, and I guess I looked suspicious or something, because, if you're African American, Eugene, you always looking suspicious. That's just the way it is. So they kind of followed me in ways, and then I like waved at them, and then they just sped off. But recently, this was about 3 weeks ago, me and my brother, we're listening to music, we're talking, having a good time, and there's this homeless guy, and like anyone got sick, he's asking. And I grew up in Eugene, so I'm very comfortable around homeless people, crackheads, and all of that. I don't mind them as long as they don't mess with me. I mean, you go along your way, you go along my way. You're not hurting me. I understand what it's like to be in poverty. So we're just listening to music, we're just talking, and then this man just goes on a tangent because he sees my windows down. He's like, N-words, Jews, Asians need to all go back to where they came from, and I hate N-words and all this stuff, and just yelling. And that really upset me, and I cursed in front of my brother. Having a momentary lapse of mindset right there, and that's just the way it is in Eugene. I've been threatened with my life on Instagram after the George Floyd happened, and I got the courage and bravery, and it takes a lot in Eugene as a person of color, and a lot of white allies don't recognize that. For like white allies, you will not get death threats like people of color have gotten. Let me tell you, I've been told that if someone was a police officer, they would kill me on purpose due to the way I look. I've been called a nigger on Instagram. No, I deleted those messages because I don't have that negativity, but I also posted them on Instagram when it happened, and I've gotten threats saying like I'll beat you up just because I'm black, and a lot of N-word comments just because I stood up for the right thing. But it's crazy to me how much racism I've experienced, and how I'm only 19, but I haven't experienced as much racism as some people, and I acknowledge that. Due to like I have lighter skin because I am mixed, so I may not experience as much racism as my uh, fellow African American brothers and sisters, due to them maybe having lighter skin or different features than me. But I remember in middle school, it was always like the kids would pick you first if you had darker skin because you were perceived as more athletic. And kids would always be like, "Oh, spit a rap, spit a rap. You know how to rap, right? Rap is your favorite music." Those are just microaggressions, but that's just that's just one way. People would always want you to rap or play sports, so you were never really encouraged to look into different art forms. Even now, I've had some friends come over, and they'll see my bookshelf and be like, "Oh shit, boy, you read?" And I'm like, "Yeah. Those are all my books. I've collected those over the years." And I'm like, "Oh, I never knew that. I never knew that you just read in your free time." Whereas if like I've never went over to a white person's house and been like, "Oh, you read? You can read too? That's a real thing. You like to read?" Because it's perceived as like, of course they like to read. They're white. You're African American. You should have rap posters all over your wall and like music and stuff. But I don't. I love music, but maybe that's not my goal. I mean, I love films and movies too, but it seems like the only ways to get out of certain places, if you are African American, Hispanic, are, to rap, dribble, or throw a ball, or to act. So I'm kind of, done with that narrative, and I kind of want to pave a way for a new generation and be like, nah, you can go to school, you can get a degree and do whatever you put your mind to. Like, I changed my degree because I was going to do film studies, but now I'm looking into social work. I'm looking into, gardening. I'm working into infusing foods and all kinds of stuff. I'm trying to broaden my approach. I'm even looking into construction right now because I just want to be able to make that money to get out of here, get my family out of here, so we don't have to experience some of the things we've experienced in our life. Another example of racism I've encountered, or not even racism, I tried to write an article for the Register Guard talking about my experiences here being mixed, and I just kept getting like weak responses. Like the editor wouldn't reach out to me for weeks on end. But when my adopted dad went and did a little piece for the Register Guard, which was really impressive, and if you would like me to send it to you, I will send it to you. He got that like right away, just right away. So I think it's a little bit different, maybe, but you can't really see it. But I think the topics we were talking about, even though they both talked about race, mine was more like personal, and you know, it kind of talked about like the faulties in our school system and the police force, which is a lot here. Because it's gotten to the point where I can't even go to protests now because I'm afraid of being followed again. Because I've been followed from coming home from a protest. I think it was at the courthouse, and I remember getting in my car and just decompressing for a second, taking some deep breaths because it's a lot to go to a protest as a person of color. It takes a lot out of you, and it kind of messes with your psyche a little bit, and that's just real talk. Because there's all that anger inside of you because it seems like the world will never end, but you got to keep living in this hell on earth. So for me, I kind of have to decompress. I got to take my stress stuff so I don't explode. So I get in my car, start it up, start driving. There's a police car behind me, so I keep driving. I'm like, oh, it's nothing. Except they followed me all the way to where our apartment is, and then they stopped in the alleyway where I pulled in. And then I got out of the car and walked to my apartment, and when I turned the corner, I just see the police car drive by, you know. And it may be a coincidence, which I highly doubt, because why would they why would they go all the way to my apartment just to check up on something? I don't know, but that was an experience where I've been followed. And then another time, this was about like 2 weeks later, I was driving to my mom's for dinner, to hang out with my mom to make sure she's doing good. And I stop at the stoplight. It's a green light, and there's a police car there, and it had been a stoplight for them. Because I remember it went from yellow, and I arrived when it would turn red. But there was a police car there at a red light, and the police car just didn't move. Just stared at me, basically, and didn't do anything. So, like the whole light, and it's about a minute light, it just stayed there. So then I drive, and so I'm looking my mirror to see if they ever go, and they just stay there for about half of their next green light, and then they go when I turn the corner. So it wasn't being followed, but kind of, that uneasy feeling of being watched, and, just being afraid of police. Going to a high school, South Eugene High School, where there's a lot of racism. In fact, it's just you can't really see it, or you don't really hear about it because it's perceived as such a white liberal school that's just so good, and they're always at the top of their class, and it's all about grades, which is true. It's mostly focused on grades, but what people don't understand about that school is they had a golden opportunity to kind of get teachings, like have a chance to have a class that would teach about different cultures and teach about African American, Asian, like my different minorities' histories, like basically most of history. But South Eugene was one of the only schools here to say no. which a lot of people don't know about. But now they're going to have it after all this pressure. But this was about 2 or 3 years ago. They said no to it. And even going to that school, you would have the football coach and like athletic director walking the halls. And I remember him stomping one of my African American friends and being like, "Oh, do you play basketball?" He's like, "No, I'm more into manga and stuff, and reading." And he's like, "Oh, but you've got the body for it. You should play basketball." And it kind of seemed like it was only because he was African American, because like he told the guy 3 or 4 times, "No, I like reading and stuff." And I played football at South for 2 years. Didn't play junior or senior year, but I remember freshman year we went to Roseburg, and this was after the Roseburg shooting. And I remember Roseburg saying they didn't want Obama to come because he's black. But that's just Oregon for you, you know. Um, so I remember going and I was playing, and I remember like hitting this guy on the other team, and he's like, "I don't know why they allow these niggers to play," and that kind of really stuck with me because I've been playing sports my whole life, mainly soccer. But that was one of the real first times that sticks with me where I had a racial experience with sports because, sports was my getaway. It was how I got my anger out and stuff. It was how I kept in shape. So that kind of really had because, it kind of wears down on you when you just get called such a slur anymore. And I feel like I've, built these mental defenses to help deal with that. And now I have so many POC friends that I can talk to, and I can talk to my mother because we have such a great relationship now. So I kind of feel like I have developed a better way to deal with things like that. So that was one of my true first experiences with racism in a sport. And right now, I haven't, like I've said before, I haven't been protesting as much, but I did go to a lot. I remember when they tear gas Eugene one of the first nights we were protesting. And I also remember we had this big protest. It was about the third night I was protesting. There was 2 small ones before that. And, I was getting real into it. I was like, this is great. And then, things started to go downhill because, there's no leadership in Eugene. there's not that many people of color in Eugene either, or in Oregon. It's a white-ass state. That's being honest with you. But I remember people taking pictures at protests. And I always thought it was weird. Because I was like, why are you taking pictures at a protest, This isn't a photo opportunity. But in Eugene, I guess a lot of white people love to take pictures at protests and post them. And, that can be harmful and good, but mainly harmful. Because I know a lot of white people in Eugene, I'm not going to say names right now, because I don't have all the names, who love to front like they're all Black Lives Matter, but behind closed doors, they're not about it. And that's just being truthful. I've lost a lot of so-called friends who said they were about Black Lives Matter, but they're not. I've had a lot of people unfollow me on social media because I'm all about Black Lives Matter. I've been all about Black Lives Matter. I'm just more vocal about it because I finally have that courage to stand up, and talk about it instead of just, being about it. I've decided to talk about it. I remember my mom put me onto activism early, really. After it was Trayvon Martin, I was so angry about that. It's hard as a kid seeing, this kid who could be you getting shot and the man getting away with it. I remember going to a vigil with him, and there was about 20 people there. And, it kind of broke my heart. And then there was Michael Brown. I remember going to a vigil for that and going to protest for that. And I remember wearing my hood at school, and people would be like, "Why are you got your hood up? Take your hood off." And I would say no, because people didn't really understand in Eugene why I had my hood up. Because people weren't, you have all these woke people now, but back then, I mean, even at Spencer Beat, you didn't have all these woke people because they were just kids. But I had to when I was in sixth grade, I had to be taught how to deal with a police officer. I know a lot of African American kids have gone through this. You put your hands on the top of your uh, roof, you roll down your window, you say, "Good day, officer, how are you?" You tell them exactly what you're doing at all times, you tell them what you're reaching for, and you are very kind to that officer because you never know when you could get killed. Even the slightest movement can get you killed. So, in sixth grade, I was taught this. And I remember watching the news and just being like, Trayvon, that kind of just going through my head. And it kind of, it really woke me up because that could have been me. And then Michael Brown could have been me, and I have family in Missouri too. So I have family who live by Ferguson. I got a cousin named Garyon who used to live near Ferguson. That could have been him. So it kind of changed my life, those series of events, protesting uh, and you know, learning about that. And it still, affects me to this day, but I'm just glad I have a platform and the ability to speak on it because I know so many people of color have been silenced or they don't know what to do or they don't know who to talk to. And I just want you to know that I'm here and you can reach out and talk to me and I will listen to your stories. And I want to be able to bring people onto the show to talk about their experiences, no matter what race or anything, LGBTQ plus, whatever you want to get out that is informative, positive, and isn't negative or detrimental to people. So this is why I made this podcast, and I'm sorry for the mic. I don't really have a good mic. I'm using this old snowball I got when I was a kid. I'm using GarageBand, but I'm trying to do my best. So I just want to thank you guys for listening to my stories, and I'll come with a new podcast soon. Thank you.